everyone. Welcome back to the Meme Team podcast, where we dissect the marketing strategies behind breakout cultural moments. I'm your host, Sonia Baschez, and today we're talking about whether AI is actually the reason why companies are laying off employees, how ads are changing in Netflix and OpenAI, actually, I guess everything's about AI because the Cannes Lion AI category is another thing. My guest today is Hiten Shah, who built Crazy Egg, Kissmetrics, and Nira. He's one of the most consistent thinkers on the internet about what actually endures in businesses, including his most recent piece, The Founders Who Got Storytelling Right. Welcome, Hiten.
Thanks for having me. I'm ready to yap.
Yeah. Awesome. So, first topic, we want to dive into all the companies that are laying off employees and using AI as one of the reasons for it. We saw Brian Armstrong of Coinbase announce 14% layoffs, so about 700 jobs. But there was also a bunch of other companies, PayPal, Freshworks, Cloudflare was another big one, Bill, and Upwork. Brian Armstrong in a long tweet basically announcing two reasons why they're laying off folks. One being the down crypto market, which, no surprise, right? But then the other one being that AI is changing the way that their employees are working. So they're basically seeing their non-technical people start shipping code. He also said that they're going to start narrowing the levels of people. A lot of the managers are going to be doing work as well. So it's going to be like, instead of they're managing a whole bunch of people, they're going to be continuing to manage those people, but also we'll have to be doing some IC work on top of that. So we've seen this, before. We saw Jack Dorsey at Block also lay off a bunch of people and say that it's AI. Salesforce has also said that. And I think the biggest thing here is just we're starting to get a lot more pushback from people in the industry saying that it's not really the AI that's like, causing all these layoffs because A, it doesn't work that well in order to be able to replace those jobs. And then B, we're seeing the after effects of the overhiring that happened during the COVID era and, ZERP area. I'm also starting to see this being like the last vestiges of companies being able to blame AI because of the pushback. I think a lot more companies are going to start either being a lot more truthful about why they're laying people off, or just, ignoring it and not making it as big of a thing by saying that AI is the reason. So, Heaton, I'm sure you've seen all these announcements. Would love to know your thoughts on like what you're seeing, and what you think is going to happen going forward.
Everyone loves a good story until it's not a good story anymore.
Mhm.
So, I think this is a good story for them,
Yeah.
but it's not a great story like it was maybe for. I'm trying to think of who did it first, but if I were to really trace this back, it wasn't because of AI, but Elon did it first after buying
Right. With
Twitter.
Twitter. Hmm.
And what it really was a realization that the company was bloated and had too many people.
Hmm.
And so I think this is more of a latent realization by a bunch of these folks that their companies are bloated and have too many people. At this point, saying AI at least gives you the chance of not having to admit that you're wrong or you
Yeah.
were wrong about how many people you hired over a 10-year period, which is quite
Hmm.
a long time to hire a lot of people,
Hmm.
and how many inefficiencies actually exist in the company. That's really the bottom line. And
Hmm.
then now we have a lot of stories out about, oh, the AI costs are going up. So that's another
Hmm.
reason. So I think that's the next story I'm seeing, which is, oh, the AI costs are so high, we have to let go of some humans. And I, I really don't think it has to do with AI replacing jobs. I think it's
Yeah.
just another way to justify uh, the swing in direction from hiring to deaccelerating hiring, if not just basically doing massive cuts. And there is a factor, if you think about it, that I think is coming as well that I'll add. And I'm curious what you think about this. If someone that uses AI is truly more efficient, maybe that's not across every department today, but there are plenty of departments where that's actually a thing. So they're
Hmm.
doubly or triply or even maybe 10x as efficient. One, what does that say about the efficiency of most people in an organization, which goes back to the earlier point? But I think the deeper thing on my mind about this is just like, yeah, of course you want to hire people who are more efficient
Mhm.
and are using the tools that that are available to them more productively. I don't think we're going in any other direction. Whether sit on one side or another side of it, technology only goes in one direction.
Definitely one thing that I saw was the way that Armstrong mentioned in his tweet saying that they're going to be looking at that going forward, like people's AI usage. And I think that that's a way that most tech companies are going to start deciding whether or not to keep people is whether they're actually using AI, because it
Right.
shows two things for me. One is that, oh shit, you're paying attention to what's happening in the market. And the other one is that like you actually care about keeping your job, regardless of you know, like whether you think there's like room for improvement. And I think there's, this huge narrative that a lot of, PM roles or marketing roles are just like cushy jobs that you're getting paid like an excess amount because it's a tech job, but you're not actually doing much on a day-to-day basis, right? I mean, that narrative was coming through from COVID, right? When you had like PMs showing off that they're, at the pool hanging out, right? Um, and so I've seen like a lot of, tech CEOs wanting to trim the fat because they're like, why are we paying all these people to go hang out on our dime, And I think AI is like one of those things now where we can just say, if you use AI, clearly you care about this company, clearly you care about your job and keeping it. And if you don't, and you're not taking that initiative to actually move forward with it, then like, why should we keep you? So I think it's going to become one of those things like, if you want to keep your tech job, you need to learn some form of AI and like figure out how to use it for your role. Because if you don't, it's just going to make it very easy for tech companies to be like, well, clearly you don't care. Why should we care to keep
Well,
you?
they're tech companies for a reason, right? They're
Right.
supposed to use the latest tech. If you work
Hmm.
in tech, you're supposed to be up to speed on tech. You might not
Hmm.
love tech, but you should
Yeah.
be up to speed on it because you work at a company that is building these tools. So I really love that point.
Yeah.
I think that's a really big point for who we're seeing doing the layoffs right now.
Hmm.
To your earlier point of, hey, the AI is not quite there yet. Yeah, it's not quite there.
Yeah, I mean, well, we saw that happened the same week as Coinbase laying off all these people. Was that Coinbase had a huge outage of their platform. Come to find out that it wasn't actually Coinbase or the engineers. You happen to do with AWS and their servers kind of fitting out on Coinbase. But the number one thing that the narrative kind of went towards was like, well, see, you get rid of your humans, and that same week, everything kind of like shuts down. And I think that's another thing that's like happening here where um, if you're gonna use AI as an excuse to lay people off, then people are then gonna see anything bad that happens to your company as being caused by AI. So it's like a double-edged sword now where it's like you're not just gonna get the benefits of saying, oh yeah, AI is making us more efficient, because the other narrative that's coming up with AI is that it's not good enough to actually replace workers, and people are shipping out buggy code that's taking down websites and taking down, platforms. This isn't the first time we've seen this, right? Like we've seen other companies also break down. And then we're starting to see a lot of vibe coders come out and like, say on Twitter that like, oh, I vibe coded this thing and I try to bring in a, real engineer to come check it. And they're like, there's nothing I can do. Like, it's so crazy what you've built, some ersatz, coding that like, there's nothing that to be saved here. You're just going to have to keep it, messed up until
Isn't
it,
that crazy?
I know. You have to kind of pick a side that like if you are going to use this as an excuse or a reason, you're also going to have to face the detractors of AI and all those people that are losing their jobs, right? To say like, well, if you had
Totally.
kept some of these people, maybe it wouldn't have broken down.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, that's clearly going to be an issue, and we're going to have to ultimately deal with it.
Yeah. So a couple lessons here are that you can't claim that AI transformation is going to redo your organization and your operations if you can't actually back it up, right? It's kind of funny that it happened in the same week, as opposed to sometimes it happens like a month later, and then you can kind of say, well, they're still kind of fixing things, but this was just like a 1-2 punch of the narrative kind of taking over and people then blaming AI for, this being the reason as opposed to, just the infrastructure in general wasn't there. But that's something that founders are going to have to keep in mind every time that they try to use AI as a way that they're becoming more efficient. And
That's
then
right.
another one is that when you use the AI efficiency story proactively, sometimes the market is gonna like force your hand. Derek Thompson spoke about this, where it's a few things that can be true at once, which is that yes, AI is going to change the way that we work, and that layoffs are probably necessary to kind of bring that efficiency. But it doesn't mean that like companies necessarily know what point they're at right now, especially if their employees aren't actually using AI to become more efficient. So I feel like
Right.
companies need to figure out what their employees are using AI for and then head towards those efficiencies as opposed to just kind of, getting rid of a bunch of people and then having to backtrack. Like we saw with Block, right? They had to go back and hire a bunch of the people that they laid off because they realized, oh, wow, we actually do need you. And then that's also a bad look because, I mean, those employees, like the loyalty, where is that going to be going forward?
I mean, I think what you just said at the end is really the big lesson, which is like you want to really think about the second and third order effects of what you're doing and try to really account for those. Otherwise, you're gonna probably like cause some unforeseen circumstances to happen in your company.
Awesome.